So as I said, we're going to do a little update to our off-meta tier list. Again, if you guys want to watch the video, you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in this area if you want to watch the previous one. Here are the disclaimers that I'll put in post that you guys should be aware of. And to start, we're going to have to first talk about all the season 12 changes and who needs to be moved around because of them. First and foremost, we see Amumu's in the S tier. That is no longer. We can happily move him down to B tier. He's seen some nerfs on his Q since last time we rated him. He's going to need to move down. Xerath is going to move up, to the A tier. Very clearly a consistent poke support and is more meta than off meta these days, so he goes up. Tahm Kench recently changed. I'm trying to push him in a support role. It's still really fresh when this video is going to come out, but overall I believe that the changes they made really didn't make him any better at support. If anything, they possibly even made him a little bit worse, and I think me ranking him in A tier previously was probably a little bit too high. Regardless, Tahm Kench will put down to B tier right now. He might even belong in C, but he's not unique enough to go into the C tier. A lot of people playing Vex. Maybe I misjudged her a little bit and we can push her up to C tier, but still in my personal opinion she's going to stay down there. Malphite still a force to be reckoned with. Zac still a force to be reckoned with. I think we're looking good here, so we can switch into videos that we've done. We have first and foremost here Ornn, who I forgot to do in our last tier list video. Ornn, the player that we covered on it, he got to Grandmaster. He was just Master when we made the video, but he actually pushed up to Grandmaster, playing primarily Ornn support. He's interesting. He is a nice like tank engage support, and his ultimate is super high value, but he is a little bit inconsistent and a little bit harder to pilot than a lot of other champions that have consistent CC. If we're looking at someone who's like in the S tier like Malphite or Zac, whose CC is pretty much foolproof, there's many ways you can stop Ornn CC, whether you just are smart and stay away from walls, you're dodging pillar potentially, and when it comes to his ultimate, you can stun him out of any portion of the stun potentially. Ornn's still pretty strong though. He is somewhat matchup reliant. You can pick him into a lot more matchups than many people in our C tier. That being said, should I put him in the B tier? I think that he is going to fit comfortably down there with a lot of the other cast in the C tier. He feels a little wonky to play as support. You poking with your Q early game doesn't feel great, and again, people who are aware of what your champion does, it's going to be pretty easy to dodge what you want to do, which is knock them up and get it. Sett support is next. The Sett support that we did the video on is a little bit of a different build, but we also included his kind of typical build that people play for Sett support. I personally never liked Sett as a champion, but after watching the video, there is some good and some bad for sure when it comes to him. Overall, his win rate right now is pretty poor in the support role, and it has been for a while, and that's because a lot of enchanters and other ranged casters, right, can basically poke Sett down as long as they do not get caught by his first flash E combo that he tries to pull off on them. Late game, he has kind of like his ultimates that he can use to either insect people closer to his team or at least get in, but with how many dashes people have, Sett has a really tough time, and even though he has that big shield, it's just not really enough for him to fit well into the support role at this moment. He's not tanky enough, he doesn't do enough damage really, and while the build that we saw was a player playing in Master again, I just don't think the average person, aka me also, can pilot him at that same level and really shouldn't be used to climb. I almost want to put him in the D tier, but I do think he is better than Brandvex and Italy, so he's going to end up in the C tier with a lot of our other cast. Neeko support, we did the video on Dog Lightning. He had made it to Challenger last year in season 11, yep, and that I think alone proves that Neeko is a pretty strong support champion. And I think if you think about it, Neeko has a lot of great options for support. One of the most amazing things about Neeko, in my opinion, is that her CC goes through minions and also is doubled or a little bit more or less depending on the level in duration, and of course gain speed as it goes through as well. So at level 1, I believe Neeko snares about 1.6 seconds if you land it through a minion, and then her follow-up damage is pretty nasty also. The build that we covered in the video is a little obsolete, honestly. He was using Predator, and Predator has since been nerfed, but Dog Lightning still plays the champion, and if you go and watch his streams, you'll see that he's now going a more damage build, which is fine. She can still do really everything you want and do even more damage than before. She just kind of works a little bit more bursty than the build that we covered in the video. All of that, I've still left out the fact that she has a huge AoE ultimate that also shields her and keeps her into safety, and you can do some nasty things with it using your invisibility. All of that being said, is she as good as Zyra or Xerath in the A tier? You know, probably not. She's very, very strong, but Zyra and Xerath are so consistent that, gosh, she's gonna go like in the head of the B tier, because I do think she's better than Anivia, LeBlanc, Trundle even. A lot of these champions in the B tier, but I don't think she makes it to like A tier, honestly. So we're gonna keep her in B for now, the head of B, even though previously I wasn't organizing these first to last in these tiers, but Neeko does deserve to be at the beginning of that, if anything. Rumble support. Rumble we can keep pretty short and sweet, right? Rumble support is really only good against melee supports, and there's not a lot of them at this moment being played. Rumble can heavily out damage if someone decides to turn on him. He has an ultimate that can turn team fights all the time. The player that we did it on is Korean, and in Korean solo queue, Rumble support was the thing for a long time, but it has really fallen to the wayside with a lot of those Rumble nerfs since then. And while I love him, I personally think Rumble is amazing. He's just a little bit too specific of when you should pick him, and you really have to make really great use of your ultimate to get pretty much anything out of him. You're a squishy monster. You're not going to be able to do much if you misplay once or twice, and you're really going to be pretty irrelevant if you do that. So Rumble we can keep short and sweet, as I mentioned. We're going to push him pretty quickly into the C tier, above Sett for sure. He unfortunately just doesn't really work too solidly in the meta right now. You can make it work still, but it's going to be a difficult time. Our first support, who is kind of off meta, but kind of not. I mean, he's super hot right now. Everybody's picking up Zilean support. We did our video on Tempos, who has over 2,000, 3,000 games on Zilean over the past 2-3 seasons. He's an absolute monster on the character, and he was very underrated when this season started, last season in season 11, and he has since been seen, thanks to Worlds, as a relevant support thanks to being picked by a team in that. So Zilean is different because your early game is horrible as Zilean. You do have some opportunity, and similar to Rumble, you really thrive off when the enemy team is going aggressive on you, because your bomb combo isn't too consistent. You can really punish people going in very easily, but when he really thrives is the game keeps getting longer and longer. You're supplying a free Guardian Angel for your team every minute when it comes to mid game, and above that as well, you have some crazy utility with the fact that you have a 99% speed up or slow, which means that you have great synergies or great counters to champions that don't have dashes, making them even more or less useful, basically. Just because of all the consistency I've seen, the fact that I've seen him working his way back in the meta, the fact that when we covered Tempos, he had a 55% win rate in Challenger as playing Zilean, which shows that, again, the champion can really be mastered, and he isn't too hard to play. Zilean's going to be our first caster ever, I guess we can call him. He's a caster, right? That's going to go in the S tier for sure. I already thought about this before the video. I was very confident Zilean was going to go in the S tier, and I do believe he belongs there. Man, dude, this one might be controversial. Twitch seems like a champion who shouldn't work as support. He's really, if anything, a solo queue god, thanks to his camouflage and being able to roam so often and just completely tilt the other lanes. He does and can fall behind pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing, and you can, again, very quickly become pretty much irrelevant to your team. But if you are able to grab 2 or 3 kills within the first 10 minutes of the game, you can pretty much carry the whole game as support, which at least at lower elos is going to make it so that you can climb very quickly, as long as your AD carry doesn't run it down in the bot lane or decide to AFK because you're never there. Obviously, Rat IRL made this very popular. We didn't cover him in the video because we like to showcase other people who also play the champion, but even that being said, a person that we covered was able to make it to master tier, like a lot of our other videos at least. And I do believe, again, if you're playing this in like gold plus, maybe even like silver plus, if you really have it down, you can easily climb your way up to platinum plus very quickly. All that being said, while he is a little bit more niche, he's going to end up in the B tier with some of our more consistent characters. Elise support. Elise was played by a Japanese player who regularly got to challenger, leveled his account using her as support, and then would sell those accounts for a good amount of money, anywhere between like 500 to 1,000 US dollars. And while she is typically a jungler, and her CC has some of the issues that we talk about with other people like Ahri and Bran, where it can't go through minions, it's a little bit hard to hit, and it's very pivotal to make your kit work. She does do a crap ton of damage too. I mean, while she kind of fits in very similarly to the same role as Ahri and Bran, honestly. Just that being said, it's going to be pretty clear that while Elise is somewhat strong, she's definitely nowhere near, again, that B or A tier. But I don't believe she's D tier because she at least has some mobility, and she does have a lot of outplay ability as well. So because of all those, Elise will make it down to the C tier as well. Malphite is next. Malphite apparently is used very heavily in lower elo. People are very confident with using Malphite support in silver, bronze, gold even. And so I was very surprised and accidentally stumbled upon someone who's played strictly almost Malphite support for the past 2 seasons up to master tier. He's already made it to master tier in season 12, mostly playing Malphite support. The issue is that he's kind of similar to Zilean in his playstyle, which sounds strange. It's similar in the way at that typically early game, you're going to be sacking your lane and just kind of tossing in Qs every now and then to make sure that you're not completely getting stopped. There are some cases you can win, but it boils down to that's normally your early game. And once the game gets into mid game or later, Malphite turns into a complete terror. He's almost a scaling support in the same way that Zilean is a scaling support, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think I can honestly, I thought I was going to rate Malphite really low, but after playing him some and after watching, obviously, this higher elo player than I play Malphite support, it might seem a little weird, but I'm going to put him up in the B tier. Absolutely. I think he really does have that solo, not really solo carry, but actually solo carry potential to make sure that your dumb team in solo queue understands when to go in. And if you look at the characters that are being played right now that are all squishy and all can be blown up on enemy teams, then pretty much if anybody gets fed, you can just 100-0 them as Malphite like that, no problem. And if they do flash or do use Gale Force to get away, you have about a 60-second cooldown at level 11 to go ahead and reset and do it again. We end up at Sylas support. I don't know how we got last here, but Sylas support is very quickly, in my opinion, a very dependent support on the enemy team. You can't pick Sylas in any situation. I mean, many of these champions you can, but Sylas even more so needs to have a good ultimate, more than likely on the enemy support that you can steal for you to really be relevant in a game. He's super aggro early game, so he works very well with characters that can go in as well, like Draven, like Lucian, right? Anyone who can play really aggressive in the bot lane with him. But once you hit level 6, if you're against a support or an AD carry whose ult does nothing for you, like if you're against like a Vayne, or if you're against, God forbid, like an Elise support, Sylas is missing a whole ultimate ability that isn't going to do much for you, at least in that 2v2. There may be some case, right, where you can say, oh, okay, the mid lane has Seraphine ultimate, or they have a Malphite top, and I'm more than happy to go ahead and choose Sylas and hope for the mid game for that. But even so, at that point, you may have already lost the game through your lane by not having that. He's still decently strong, but because he's so enemy team dependent, he's going to have to end up with a lot of our other cast down here in the C tier. And that is everybody that we've done a video on so far. There may be some correction necessary here now that we see it all together. LeBlanc looks a little bit too high rank, honestly, and I think she's going to end up having to be pushed to the C tier, which has now outgrown itself here. It's gotten a little bit too big. Other champions that more than likely don't belong, probably going to be Kayle. Unfortunately, Kayle doesn't offer enough healing, and her ultimate's on too long of a cooldown to really belong in the C tier. I think the final correction we'll do is we'll move up Neeko. Absolutely. Again, she has lots of CC. She has pretty much everything you'd want as a support with good roaming potential, good CC potential, good damage. Now I feel pretty confident on where we've landed here. If you guys like this video, go ahead and check out the last video if you want my old explanations on why some of these champions made their way here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.